Alright, the time now is 1 p.m. We will start now. So, Assalamualaikum and very good evening to everyone, especially Dr. Kartini. Thank you so much for joining us today. Alright, before we start, I would like to introduce to you to our speaker of the day, which is Dr. Kartini Abdul Jabbar. She is the Outreach Director of Befrienders KL. So a little bit about Befrienders. Befrienders is a non-profit organization. So they provide emotional support 24/7 to people who are lonely and who are in need. So if you guys ever need help, do check out their website. So it's befrienders.org.my. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you Dr. Kartini Abdul Jabbar. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Aina. I'll be uploading these slides. Can you see the slides? Aina, can you actually see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's great. All right. So today what I'll be talking about, I think your program is about You Are Not Alone. So I'll be talking about how to take care of your mental health, a little bit about mental health, and I'll talk about the facilities, the support that the Befrienders KL actually provide, and a little bit on how to detect depression and suicide. So I'm Kartini Abdul Jabbar. I'm the Outreach Director for Befrienders KL. So Befrienders KL is a not-for-profit organization. It's a non-governmental organization. It's a suicide prevention center. All the befrienders are volunteers, which means that I'm a volunteer. So I'm a medical doctor by profession, but my specialty is not psychiatry. My specialty is medical microbiology. However, if you have any questions about mental illness or anything like that, I can actually answer the basic, but not too detailed, because I'm at the end of the day, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So I'll be talking to you about mental health awareness and suicide prevention and how to take care of your mental health. So what is mental health? It's a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her abilities, can cope with normal stresses of life. So and can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make contribution to his or her community. So what happens when there's a breach of these capabilities? They start having depression and other illnesses, mental illnesses, because they're unable to cope with the normal stresses of life. Therefore, they can't work productively or fruitfully, and they are unable to make contributions to the community. So what is the role of Befrienders Kuala Lumpur? Our vision is to see a world in which fewer people feel the need to end their own lives, and our mission is to do that by alleviating the distress and reduce the risk of suicide through emotional support and public education. So how do we provide emotional support? It's through active listening. So our training is a minimum of 8 weeks, which is to teach us on how to do active listening only. And basically there's a range of assessments, which if whoever who actually is able to do it or is willing to go through the strenuous training for befriending, they proceed on for another 6 months of training. So in the Befrienders KL, we provide emotional support, there's public education, and also a support group. Our public education is basically talks that we give. So one of the outreach activities that we do right now is what I'm doing right now, talking to all of you and telling you about the services provided by Befrienders KL, and talking to you a little bit about mental health and how to take care of your mental health. We also run every year we run a public talk. It usually coincides around the day of the month of mental health awareness or suicide prevention. So it's between September and October. We would have a public talk. So we just had our public talk a few weeks ago, but we do give outreach support by giving public education on a request basis. Our support group is provided by all those who are affected by grief or by suicide. So anyone who has relatives who are affected by bereavement, that means someone passed away, they can actually join our support group, but you would have to contact the administration to find out the dates for the support group. Because previously, before the MCO, we had our activities through face-to-face, but some of our activities have to be stopped now because we can't do any more face-to-face. So our last public talk, we had it as an online talk. So what kind of emotional support that we give? It's free of charge, it's confidential, it's anonymous, which means that we don't know who calls us. It's confidential. It means that what we hear and what the callers tell us would remain within that one phone call. We are trained to be non-judgmental, which means that you can come to us with any kind of issues, any kind of problems, or anything that you want to talk to. Our helplines are 24 hours. We also provide email support, but we have more people coming to helplines because it's a need for them to talk straight away, whereas our emails actually take some time because you won't get your reply there and then. Our face-to-face at the moment has been stopped because of the MCO, so we can't do any more face-to-face at the moment, and because of the CMCO, we can't actually provide the services from the center at the moment. So even right now, even our email and 24-hour helpline is actually a work-from-home service. So our public education, we provide talks and workshops. We provide talks on suicide prevention, mental health, self-care, and listening skills. So we do have workshops on how to do active listening, which is basically one of the smaller modules of one of the days within the 8 weeks of training that we give to our befrienders. Our support group is called Healing Connections. It's a support group for suicide survivors who are grieving over a death or suicide. But at the moment, this is not, because we can't do face-to-face. So we haven't done the suicide support group yet, the support group for the suicide survivors yet. However, if there is any requests, you can actually contact the administration at admin@befrienders.org.my. So Befrienders in Malaysia, there are 9 centers at the moment, but each center works individually on its own, which means that we have Befrienders Kuala Lumpur, Befrienders Ipoh, Befrienders Penang, Befrienders Melaka, Befrienders Johor Bahru, Befrienders Seremban, Befrienders Kota Kinabalu, Befrienders Muar, Befrienders Kuching. Each center actually works on its own, which means that they have their own organization, they have their own people who are in charge, they have their own center on its own. So Befrienders Kuala Lumpur was established in 1970 after the 13th May 1969. I'm not sure if all of you know about that. So at that time there was a lot of stress because people were under a lot of duress because at that time we were in a state of emergency. So a group of people came up with the idea of providing emotional support to all of these people. So since then there was always this phone line that anybody could call. But this center was set up in, we call it Befrienders Kuala Lumpur, but the center is actually in PJ, in Jalan Templer. So this group of people, they had training from, if you've heard of Samaritans UK, so we adopted some of the modules. We adopted the module from Samaritans UK, and after that what we did was that we tailored it along the years, within the 50 years that we've been ongoing. We've tailored it to support the local issues. So for example, there are some ways that over in the UK, because they use British English, the Queen's English, they would have a different manner of connecting with the people who are core. So for ours is a bit different in that sense, in the way we communicate. But otherwise our syllabus is about the same. We do have a Befrienders worldwide, and we are aware of the activities, but we're not sure whether our syllabus is the same or not, because ours literally comes from the UK syllabus. So we have other centers who popped up after that. So the places that still do not have would be in the East Coast, which is Kelantan, Pahang, and also Terengganu, which don't have any centers yet. So if anybody is interested, if you want to follow the training and you want to set up over there, feel free to do it. So on our website at befrienders.org.my, we have the details on how to contact if anybody in distress wants to liaise or contact for all the 9 centers. So most of the centers, we have a phone call facility, phone call caller service. Some of us actually have emails, and some of the centers actually have WhatsApp. However, our service hours are different. For Befrienders Kuala Lumpur, ours is a 24-hour service. We have about 100 volunteers who take turns. Whereas the other centers are smaller centers, so the number of hours that they're able to provide are actually more limited. But if based on calling issues, it would be cheaper if they're from the same state, they call from their own state. However, since August last year, we managed to get 8 telcos to provide free call lines to our center, which are Celcom, Digi, Maxis, TM, Time, U-Mobile, WeBe, and Yes. So we're very grateful because they're able to provide that service. And because of that, we actually got more calls. So our calls right now is 0376272929, which is 24 hours, and our email would be sam@befrienders.org.my for those who are feeling distressed, suicidal, or depressed. Previously, our calls was a different number, but that's because that was the number at the call center. So now this number is actually it's an online number which feeds to the work from home capability service, which previously we never had this before. So these numbers actually go straight to the Defender itself. And previously what happened was that because we called from the center, so we would be able to know the specific languages, because all the Defenders would have different languages that we could speak. So this is actually the downside of not being able to be at the center, because if we were at the center, we would have we would know who is working on what day, which has those Tamil speakers or Mandarin speakers or Cantonese speakers. But now it's kind of limited because we won't know what is the usual schedule because of the CMCO. We work from home, so we can't see the schedule in that sense. So our number of contacts, unfortunately, I can only give you data from 2018 because the data from 20, we should have the data from 2019, but because of the CMCO of the MCO started from March onwards, I didn't get all the data. So in 2018, for all our contacts, which means the people calling in or emailing or face-to-face, was about 82 contacts per day. During the MCO, it jumped up to 100, and then there was some time because we changed over to the Skype version. So when it was the online version, our calls actually got reduced. Because people didn't know how to use Skype, and that reduced to about 60 calls per day. But now, because our phone lines is back, it's a different way, but it's a phone line method. So our calls have been going up more than 100 contacts per day, 100 calls per day. This is not inclusive of email. So the common issues would be mental health, which is about 22 to 25%. Relationships about 16 to 19%. Family issues about 14%. Social issues about 8%. Job 8%, and illness about 5%. So our mental health, when we stratify as under mental health, the person could be having depression, could be having schizophrenia or any kind of mental illness, or maybe they have anxiety. When it is a relationship issue, it can range right from having to break up in a relationship or having a strenuous relationship. And for family, it could be issues that occur within the family, between either husband and wife, or parents and children, or among siblings. For social issues would usually mean that the people have difficulty communicating with the people around them. So they have a problem with fitting in. For job, it would be either financial or they have issues with the job, as in like they can't fit in the job workplace. A small percentage would be for illness, because we have some callers who have chronic illnesses and they can't get out of the home, or they have problems which impede their usual activities of daily living. So the illnesses actually cause an impediment. They can't do things which they usually like to do, or maybe they're being stigmatized because people see them differently. So there are various things which make people call us, but our main aim is we treat all calls very seriously. So we treat them as serious calls. No call goes unattended. We try to attend all our calls. If the calls basically they're wrong and nobody gets through, it's because we are actually on another call, and there's a limited number of defenders working at each time. So our main idea is to do suicide prevention. So we do ask all our callers whether they have suicidal ideation. So for suicidal ideation, about 36% either have a thought of committing suicide, or it could be as bad as actively planning to do it at that time itself. So back to the mental health problems in this country. There was a survey done by the government in 1996 and in 2015, and they found that there was a jump from 1996 10.7% to 2015, which became 29.2% of adults aged above 16 who suffer from some form of mental illness. So they found that it was high among females, younger adults, which is about 16 to 29, singles, widows, divorcees, there would be other Bumiputras, low income. For our statistics, basically we find more females call than males, but that's because we think because females have an easier time talking to people, whereas guys probably don't have, they probably feel reserved from talking. So maybe that's why we have a higher number of females. For our younger adults, ours actually have a larger span. So the most would be between the teenage years right up to about 50 years old. That would be our main bulk. But we've had calls as young as, for me, I've had call as young as 11. Some people may have had children younger than that in primary school calling them about issues. So based on the National Mental Health Study, they found in 2017, between the ages of 13 or 17 years old, they did a survey, and they did this DAR scoring, which is to find out whether the people are depressed, anxious, or stressed. And they found that between this adolescent age, 1 in 5 were depressed, 2 in 5 were anxious, 1 in 10 was stressed. And they found that there was a mounting number of adolescents who had suicidal behavior. So there were more girls who had suicidal ideation compared to boys, but not that much difference. But they found that between 2012 to 2017, the numbers actually rose from a single digit to a double digit. So it is from 6.4 to 7.9, it became to 6.9 to 10% for suicidal behaviors between a 5-year span. So what happens? How do you detect if a person is having suicidal ideation? That person would wake up wishing that person has died in their sleep, or they hated themselves so much that they couldn't look in the mirror. They would say that it's the cancer of the soul. They would sometimes feel a tightening in the chest, as if someone had grabbed the heart and hold onto it tightly. Or maybe they would feel numb, so they feel nothing at all, whether physically or psychologically. It's just an empty space, and they're wondering whether they are the only ones who are feeling this way. And towards a more serious way, they would also start to feel complete and utter hopelessness. So what happens is that at that time they can't talk to anyone because they feel that nobody is going through what they are going through. So they can't talk to the people around them, and even if they did, they felt that the people around them were judging them. And these are actually the things that they are going through inside, which sometimes when we are on the outside we can't see. So that's why in Befrienders KL all our calls are anonymous and confidential, so that it gives them that to encourage people to call us knowing that they would not be judged, and that the calls would not be known to anyone, and that they can talk about anything at all. So what's the difference between depression and sadness? Depression is not sadness, and it's not part of aging. It's not a weakness or laziness or a character flaw. Depression is actually a clinical illness. It's a mood syndrome, which means that the person has a low mood for at least 2 weeks, which is then they can be diagnosed with clinical depression, and within that 2 weeks they can't even get out of that low mood. For all of us, when we have something terrible happen, so I don't know what you would define as terrible. So some people might think having a bad grade is terrible, but the thing is that within that 2 weeks, the rest of us who don't have depression, or the rest of us who can tolerate it, we will just jump out of it within a few days, which means that we won't be consistently low mood and sad for 24/7 for those 2 weeks. So depression can happen to anyone. It's a medical condition